Authoritarian states have traditionally relied on secret police to maintain control and hegemony, usually by working outside the law to suppress dissent or resistance. In Stalin's Russia, the KGB was in charge. In Nazi Germany, it was the Gestapo. And in East Germany, it was the dreaded Stasi. And in today's video, we're going to tell you about some of the most terrifying operations of Stasi. So, without further delay, let's get straight into the video. As one of history's most effective intelligence services, the Stasi compiled lots of data on a vast number of people, while generating a climate of dread and discomfort, of which they later took advantage. Origin of Stasi. The Stasi was created out of the internal security and police system built in the Soviet zone of occupation in Germany during World War II. It is still in operation today. This ministry, whose predecessor was the Commissariat 5, modeled after the Soviet KGB, was established by law on February 8, 1950, 4 months after founding the German Democratic Republic. This agency, whose legal mission was not specified by statute, was charged with internal political surveillance and international espionage. It was under the supervision of the Socialist Unity Party, which was in power at the time. Its workforce was initially very small, and its primary tasks were counterintelligence against Western operatives and the suppression of the final remnants of Nazism. In short order, however, the Stasi gained a reputation for kidnapping former East German officials who had left the country. Many of those who had been forcefully returned were killed. As time went on, this remit gradually developed into a broader desire to have information and therefore control over the population. This was ostensibly to keep them safe from disruptive, destructive influences, but in reality, a climate of fear was an extremely effective tool for creating an obedient population. Widespread reach. According to official figures, the Stasi employed around 90,000 individuals. However, the Stasi depended on widespread involvement to attain such levels of efficacy. It is believed that 1 in every 6 Germans was engaged in informant work for the Stasi, and every factory, office, and apartment block had at least one person on the Stasi payroll living or working there. Following the dissolution of the German Democratic Republic, the actual scope of Stasi monitoring was revealed. They maintained data on 1 in every 3 Germans and used over 500,000 unauthorized informants. Citizens' records included voice recordings, photos, film reels, and millions of paper documents. In addition, small cameras placed in cigarette cases or bookcases were used to spy on people's houses. Envelopes were steam-opened and read, talks were taped, and overnight guests were logged. Numerous procedures used by the Stasi were really pioneered by the Nazis, particularly the Gestapo. They leaned extensively on information collecting and intelligence collection to help build terror in residents and compel them to condemn one another. That worked exceedingly well. Millions more were believed to have been killed before collection and archiving. Today, persons who have Stasi documents have the right to access them at any time, and they may also be seen all over the country with some personal information removed. Relationship with the KGB. Although Mielke's Stasi was superficially granted independence in 1957, the KGB maintained liaison officers in all 8 main Stasi directorates, each with its own office inside the Stasi's Berlin compound, and in each of the 15 Stasi district headquarters around East Germany. Collaboration was so close that the KGB invited the Stasi to establish operational bases in Moscow and Leningrad to monitor visiting East German tourists. Mielke referred to the Stasi officers as Chekists of the Soviet Union. Finally, in 1978, Mielke formally granted KGB officers in East Germany the same rights and powers that they enjoyed in the Soviet Union. International covert intelligence. The activities of the Stasi were not limited to the territory of the former German Democratic Republic. Several British and American citizens were suspected of working as Stasi spies. The GDR maintained a watchful eye on any foreigners who arrived in the country for indications of dissent or disturbance. Agents of the Stasi entered foreign embassies, typically posing as cleaning personnel, to listen for valuable intelligence information. Additionally, the the Stasi provided security services and armed forces training to countries throughout the Middle East, including countries such as Iraq and Syria, as well as Libya and Palestine, all of which were sympathetic to the cause of socialism or, at the very least, allies of the Soviet bloc in some shape or form. But, unfortunately, we didn't know how important their position in international politics was until the previous decade, since most of the material outlining activities was lost when the GDR was dissolved. Authoritarian governments across the globe continue to use some of the methods popularized by the East German dictatorship, such as the employment of informants, which are still extensively utilized today. But, on the other hand, states are today using contemporary technology to oppress their inhabitants in ways that the Stasi could never have imagined, by tracking individuals' movements, eavesdropping on their conversations, and tracking financial transactions, to mention a few examples. In reality, the technologies are accessible to and are being utilized by businesses and governments in free democracies. States today have significantly more authority than the Stasi, says David Murakami Wood, an assistant professor of sociology at Queen's University in Canada, who specializes in societal surveillance studies. And it's not only the states that we have to be concerned about right now, he says. Without this modern technology, the Stasi surveillance was reliant on paper files. They were formerly a vital component and are now a lasting emblem of their monitoring system, and they are numerous. If you were to put them end to end, they would reach for a total distance of 111 kilometers. While many former victims of the Stasi want to access their files, requests to examine them often come from the second and third generations, according to a representative for the Stasi Records Agency. This was undoubtedly true according to many reporters as well. For example, a reporter's grandmother escaped the GDR in 1958, dressed as if she were going to work and boarding a train that took her all the way to London. She did not stop traveling until she reached the capital. In a few years, the Berlin Wall would be constructed, and she would not see her family again until after it had been demolished, by which time she had married and divorced and had become a mother and grandmother. She had few acquaintances, although having lived in Britain her whole adult life. Her funeral was attended by just 8 people. She never spoke about her time in the GDR or participated in critical political debates throughout her time there. Early forms of gaslighting. The arresting and torturing of those who'd been suspected of disobeying the government was only too harsh and evident. The Stasi, on the other hand, spent years honing a method known as Zersetzung, which was basically what we'd refer to as gaslighting in modern times. Because they had become enemies of the state, they were all subjected to various punishments, including imprisonment, and they were all made aware that they were being observed at all times by security personnel. Millions of inhabitants of the former German Democratic Republic, or GDR, went to great measures to spy on and control its people. This practice was widely condemned at the time. Nevertheless, it was general knowledge that the Ministry of State Security, also known as the Stasi, wiretapped, bugged, and followed ordinary persons. There were holes on the walls from the steaming opening of mail. Unofficial informers made up roughly 200,000 of the total, with hundreds of thousands of occasional additional sources offering details on their neighbors and relatives, acquaintances, and co-workers. Because it was the self-declared sword and shield government, it sought to suppress opposition and promote a vast propaganda machine in the creation of a new ideal communist human being. When it came to freedom, it was an unabashed police state in which extraordinary means, even by authoritarian standards, were employed to suppress rights until it was eventually overthrown and assimilated into the newly reunified German nation. However, the consequences of the GDR's policies did not stop there. Indeed, the implications of that decision are still being felt today. And if we suppose that its efforts serve as a model for current surveillance nations, such as China, North Korea, Belarus, and Uzbekistan, in that case, their history serves as a warning, providing insight into how vast control systems may impact our brains and society in general. The intruders would break into their house while at work, and shift things about, alter the clocks and rearrange the refrigerators. It's possible that they may be blackmailed or that their secrets will be divulged to family members or co-workers. Some people had their mailboxes stuffed with pornographic material, while others had their tires deflated regularly. In many situations, this was a minor kind of harassment on the part of the victim. Nevertheless, the Stasi could follow individuals on the streets, visit their places of employment, prevent them from progressing through university or their careers, and put them to the bottom of waiting lists for housing and healthcare. Mass compliance. Unsurprisingly, the subtle reach of the Stasi proved to be a severe disincentive to any prospective dissidents in the country. Families and friends were known to share information with one another, and expressing opposition to the dictatorship to nearly anybody might be a risky and perhaps life-threatening decision. Mass conformity with the system was guaranteed by the fear of losing chances, being exposed to a continuous harassment campaign, or even being tortured and imprisoned. The Stasi was dissolved as a result of the fall of the GDR. Fearing they would destroy hard evidence and paper trails to escape future punishment, locals took over the old Stasi offices to preserve the documents contained inside in 1991. Astonished by the revelations contained inside, particularly the scope of cooperation and informing, as well as the sheer quantity of information held on regular people, practically everyone was taken aback. That's all for today's video. If you've just stumbled across this channel for the first time, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more interesting videos we have in store for you. Thanks for watching.